Hello, welcome to Fuse from PRCA. My name's Dan Gold. Farzana will be with us in our next episode. On today's episode, we are joined by two remarkable guests who have been shaping the landscape of food, drink, and hospitality PR. I am excited to introduce Emily and Liam Keogh, the co-founders of the award-winning PR agency Palm. With their expertise and innovative approach, Emily and Liam have carved a niche in the industry, driving success for their clients while nurturing a vibrant work culture. Emily, Liam, thank you so much for joining us here on Fuse today.
Thank you so much for having us, Dan. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. I think we should hasten to add, because we do have the same surname, that we are actually brother and sister and not any other form of relation or partnership. We're certainly not husband and wife, which some people might see or think when they see our names on paper. But yeah, we're delighted to be joining together on this today.
This brother and sister combo, it's fascinating to me going into work together. You're right, so many agencies are husband and wife, and that's a common misconception that absolutely could happen, and I'm sure you've experienced it many times. But you come to this with different expertise. I mean, Emily's come from this creative strategist side with the travel and hospitality, food and drink, and then Liam, 20 plus years leading the strategy side or strategic side for industry giants. And I'm just really intrigued to see this space, and we'll talk about the agency in just a second, but this space between you, where is there that sibling complementary relationship, and where is that professional line where you both have quite different specialities but complementing each other?
I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think one thing to say on this is that we have had Palm for 13 years, and we started the agency when we were both relatively young. So I was 26 and Liam was actually only 22. So, you know, most of our kind of adult working life, we've been working together. And I think that makes a real kind of difference. I think people always are kind of shocked that we can work together as brother and sister. And I'm sure Liam has a lot to add on this, but I think the key learning that we've taken over the years is to divide and conquer and not try and do the same thing. And I think in PR, especially when you're starting out, you have to wear so many hats, but over the years, you really kind of work out what bits really fit, you know, your personality type. So as you mentioned, I do more of the creative strategy, and Liam's amazing at the kind of operational kind of agency framework and planning kind of side. And then when we don't cross over on those bits, it goes swimmingly well.
Yeah, I think, you know, our kind of secret of success is to basically have as little to do with each other as possible. You know, Emily said, you know, we've got different skill sets, but actually we're very similar in personality type. So it works really well. We have our own spheres of influence. We have our own areas that we're responsible for. And I think that works on a personal level in terms of how we operate together. But from a business point of view, it's very efficient, because actually we're both capable of doing stuff at a very high level. And if we end up doubling up, it doesn't actually add any value. As Emily says, dividing and conquering is our way of getting the most out of each of our productivity. And for a long time, we were kind of working together in tandem, working across similar things all the time. And I would say it probably wasn't until that point where we diverged our responsibilities that we were able to really grow the agency. And I think the added advantage of that is it makes the working relationship better. I think we have like all of the benefits of running a business with your sibling without any of the downsides because of that. And I think the best thing that you can get from working with a sister or a brother is you just have that incredible level of trust and that incredible level of understanding of what the other person wants, where the other person wants to take the business. And we just work incredibly well together because we're pretty much in sync on everything. So a lot of the time we don't even need to really ask the other person their opinion because we're pretty certain of the way they would like to proceed with things.
Was there a time that you literally, from beginning of day to end of day, would be constantly in contact? And did you get to the point of going, actually, the healthy gap and letting us specialize in our own spaces really matters? Because look, I love my sister, and I hope that my sister's watching this. I love you, Penny. But, you know, could we be in the same airspace constantly? Absolutely not, as much as I love and respect her. But yeah, was there a point where you consciously or unconsciously put that space in to let each other breathe?
I mean, most of our working relationship, apart from, post-COVID when it's hybrid working, we have been every day together in the office, that has never been a problem. It's been more about, as we said, the decision making. So yeah, I mean, it sounds terrible. It sounds really corny, but I'm perfectly happy to hang out with Liam all day long. And as Liam said, I think the thing about being in a business partnership with a sibling is that you really understand that person's moral compass. And you know that even the kind of minutiae decisions that you're both making, we're both guided by the same kind of North Star, kind of, value wise and everything else. So yeah, I think the one thing is we don't really hang out outside of work. That's where we probably draw a line, because we just end up talking about work anyway. So yeah, we're quite happy all day long at work, and then after work finishes, we kind of go off and do our separate things.
Yeah, I think we are in constant contact. I think we like that, and I think, to be honest, if you run a business, obviously there are points where it's incredibly stressful because you're having to grapple with issues, and you need someone that you can just have a sounding board with. So we're constantly talking to the other person to get opinions and second thoughts on the different way to proceed with things. I think we will often ring each other just to talk at the end of the day if we've not spoken to each other all day. And sometimes we will say, "Don't worry, I'm not ringing you about work. I just want to talk about."
Yeah, because they won't pick up the phone.
Yeah, but no, I think that side of it has never been the issue. I think we diverged because we realized there was a real business case for it. And then when we diverged, we thought, oh, actually, we should have done that a long time ago. Because not only has it been better for the business, but also we can then each of us achieve more individually with that support of the other person in the background.
And I think, we actually have, like, the relationship that Liam and I have, which is really open and kind of really frank and everything else. We have actually got that with our senior leadership team. We do kind of monthly breakfast with them and stuff. And I'd say, it's exactly the same, which is really nice. I think we kind of inculcate that through the team. It's not us and them, which I know, sometimes it can be, especially if you've got two co-founders. We're not in a kind of ivory tower making decisions. It's very collaborative, and that's kind of part of the fun of it, because building relationships with humans is obviously, as PRs, is what we love, but with your own team, it's the best.
Has there ever been a moment where being a sibling has been an advantage? There are times in the office where it's got late for one person or another, and you think normally, oh, I won't message them because it's too late. But being a sibling, it's like midnight, midnight, like it's fine because they're my sibling. And have you ever had to have that conversation to go, actually, it was just a bit too late for me? Because we do take liberties when it's someone who's a member of the family.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, going back to it, as we started the business so young, we probably don't know really kind of any different. And it has been our life since our early 20s. Having said that, we might start work quite early when things are super busy, but we are both good at switching off at the weekend. And, neither of us would ever be working at midnight, so I think that we're both pretty good at that.
But yeah, we certainly, over the years, it's just really fantastic to have that person you can ring up and you can be like, I have totally mucked up here. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I've made this mistake. And you can just say it in an environment where there are the only consequence is going to be that you're going to get help. And I guess that's not necessarily normal when you're at a very senior level. I don't know. We've not experienced the alternative, but yeah, it happens all the time. We might be saying, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can you help me, or whatever it is? It's very, very valuable. It's very, very valuable. And to be honest, I always say this, but I cannot fathom how someone would either run an agency on their own or run an agency with someone they didn't have that level of compatibility and trust with. And I think a sibling is almost uniquely placed over other relationships. Obviously, if it's a romantic partner, there's issues with that. A parent and child dynamic is a bit of an unusual dynamic as well. A sibling or a very, very close cousin, I would say, is probably the best person for you to have a business partnership with.
What were the early days of like, hey, I think we should do this and we're good together, and this is the type of organization that we would like to build? Because from that first conversation, was it just organically, yes, this is great? Was there any, pause in there about the relationship, or was it just like, hey, I'm in? And can we go into how that steered what Palm is?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I had started off at Ogilvy on the consumer PR team there, which was headed up by Kerry Milliken at the time. I then worked at Mischief under Mitch while he was kind of driving the agency to the engine sale. So an incredibly intense time. And during this period, obviously working across consumer PR, wearing millions of different hats as you do, doing everything from kind of Sheila's Wheels car insurance to Quaker Oats to gaming, whatever else you're kind of thrown into. I kind of realized that the whole time, all I was doing in my spare time was looking at hospitality and travel, kind of new openings, researching kind of food and drink brands. And I had this moment where I thought, why aren't I just doing PR in these sectors? So I moved to a very small hospitality agency, and I noticed that the hospitality agency market at that time wasn't really applying the kind of considered structure as the bigger kind of consumer agencies were. So I had this idea, why not bring together that kind of big agency strategic work and structure, and kind of measurability and accountability, and but do it in those sectors. And I think, Liam, you at the time, you were actually working in hospitality and journalism, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I left school and got a job as a journalist straight away when I was 18, and I did that for about 5 years, and then I ran nightclubs for a long time as well. So I kind of came to PR, not having really done PR, but also having done PR, but not in any way experienced. And I think in terms of the development of the agency, I think coming from a point of like huge naivety has been, in my opinion, our greatest strength. I think very early on we did a very good job of managing the client campaigns. I think we were really good at that from a very, very early point in the life of the agency. But what we certainly didn't know was how to run an agency and how to create a culture. And I think because our early years we were disastrous in that way, we've learned so much, and now everything that we've built has been through trial and error. So I feel very confident in talking about the good systems that we've built now, the great culture that we've built. But all of that, I think, has been created from a point of not necessarily understanding how to do it in the beginning and having to learn through mistakes. So the culture we've got at the moment has been perfected through years of trial and error. And I would say it's not really until the last like 7 years that we really, really nailed it. Because one, we were inexperienced in that department, but two, we were also very, very young. And we've matured and our experience has grown. So I think in a way, starting at a very young age has been really advantageous because we approached everything with zero prejudice because we didn't have a set way of doing things. So everything that we have created has been based on our understanding and our experience of what genuinely works and what genuinely doesn't work. So we basically perfected a system through that process that's been very, very effective. On the client servicing side, I don't think we've had any real challenges. We were always really, really good at that, and we were able to win business really, really early on, and it kind of just took off very, very
Yeah.
quickly.
So Liam essentially was kind of, doing those things, and I started off, and it's kind of rocketed so fast. We won so many clients so quickly that, Liam kind of came, I think you're living in Leeds or Manchester, came down and started working full time
Mm.
on it. But as Liam said, I think one of the things that I think, maybe made us kind of a bit slower to evolve, but actually has been a real benefit, is that we weren't taking methods from other agencies and
Mm.
just kind of using, a cookie cutter kind of approach. We were actually thinking about it and engaging with it, and we weren't really trying to emulate a certain other agency. We've just always done, what we feel worked. And we've worked with so many really innovative startups. We've worked directly with the founders. I think one of the things that I'm personally passionate about is, we're real experts in the industries that we operate in, and specialists in that. And, we've had so much one-on-one time with incredible founders that have done so many exciting things. And we've been part of that team. Because we were a small agency, that's what happens. They pull you in, on everything. I mean, thinking about what we were just talking about with Liam and I having work boundaries, the place probably where there's been the least boundaries is when we were a young agency, and the clients used to just be, calling us round the clock, and we were so excited about it. We'd always be there doing things, and it was an amazing learning curve, obviously hugely over servicing and not the right move, when we grew. But in those early days, it was a great way of kind of really immersing ourselves in the landscape.
So, from the lessons that you learned from those early days, you've already touched on it. You've spoken specifically about systems and building your own way of doing things. So, I'm really intrigued to see how your systems evolved as your agency grew, as you added people to your organizations and you learned lessons of, okay, this is the direction, and you must have had an element of pivoting, like, we're going to try this, try this, try this. How did you then get to the point of introducing that element of entrepreneurism that we've spoken about previously into empowering your employees? Because that is something that you often hear an organization goes, run this like it's your own business, but you've systemized this and really empowered people.
Yeah, I think that the biggest lesson that we learn at the outset of our company over the years is that, like, culture is the number one priority we have in the agency, and we will always prioritize our team over our clients. And I mean, it's such a cliche, but we really, really fundamentally believe that. One, it's kind of the decent thing to do to be really great employers, but the other point is, from a business point of view, if the team are really well nurtured, they're motivated, they're engaged, they're well remunerated, then the client work will take care of itself. And, like, we fundamentally believe that. So we kind of have like four principles that shape the culture in the agency. The first one is that we want everyone to have the benefits that they would have if they owned the agency themselves. And those benefits are primarily that you have more control over what you earn, you have a better financial incentive, and also you have that sense of autonomy and self-determination. So when it comes to pay, well, I'll talk about that a bit in a moment, but, like, we do literally everything we can to pay people as much as we can. So we have loads of different bonus systems. We have loads of different commission systems, all aligned with performance. We are employee owned. So we have an employee ownership model. People 2 years into their life at the agency, they'll get shares in the company. And then the other thing is we try and create a culture where people can determine the outcome of the work themselves. So what we mean by that is first of all, like, we do not believe philosophically in micromanagement. Like, our fundamental belief is that the more independence people have, the better job they have, the better job, sorry, they will do. If they have like a very senior member of the team breathing down their neck, attending every client meeting, overseeing every bit of work they'll do, they'll step back themselves and they won't put forward their full potential. We have a very, very flexible working model at the agency, and like, we really believe in flexible working model. Again, it's a philosophical point. Like, I think some companies post-COVID think, well, we've got to do it because everyone will walk, and they do it through gritted teeth. They don't really think it works. They'd much rather everyone in the office 5 days a week. We do not have that opinion. We believe that flexible working has a benefit for the company and for the employees, and it just works much better than that. And then when it comes to self-determination, we try and create an environment where people can actually determine what type of clients they work on. We have a separate new business team, and they can essentially work into that new business team and say, right, I want to represent more of these types of brands. Maybe, for example, they have a particular passion for sustainability or British businesses or whatever it is, and they might want to build a portfolio of that. Everything that we do is we try and give people choice and self-determination, because our fundamental belief is that if they have that, then they will be way more engaged in the role, and they'll do a better job. So that's one, making sure that they have all the advantages that they would have if they own the agency themselves. The other thing is progression. Like, we are obsessed with progression at the agency. And what we mean by that is we have created an environment where people can progress at the speed they want. I mean, some people do not want to progress at light speed, and that's absolutely fine. Interestingly, most people in the PR world really, really want to progress. And I look after recruitment, and pretty much every single person I interview, first question, why are you looking for a new job? Why are you leaving your current agency? They all say to me, there wasn't enough progression at the last place. So
I think that's a key point. You know, we over the last 13 years, almost every single interview we heard that, why are you leaving? Don't feel there's any career progression. Don't feel there's any career progression. So that is a real driver for why we started, you know, the system that I think Liam's just going to talk through now.
Yeah, so I think the way it's easiest to explain by thinking of it as growing from the bottom up rather than the top down. We have what I would call like a grassroots approach to growth. I think normally in an agency that isn't like a mega sized agency, like the founders, they're out, they're winning new business and they're filtering it down and they're growing it that way. What we do is we allow each individual team to grow themselves based on how they want to grow. And we have something we call salary targeting at the agency. So in addition to unlocking commission and bonuses, if you grow your team, you'll also unlock a higher salary as well. I think in most jobs, not just PR, but in most jobs, you work very hard, you slog your guts out, and at the end of the process, you turn around to your boss and you say, well, look, come on, I deserve a pay rise. I've been working really hard. And then at that point, there's a fork in the road as to whether you get it or not, right? And 9 times out of 10, your boss will have to make a decision on the financial situation of the business, which the employee will know nothing about. So what we do at the agency, first of all, we give everyone complete transparency on the financials within their team. We have something we call radical transparency. So they know exactly how much money each of their clients are bringing in. They know how much money it costs to run their team. And therefore, from that, they know if they want to increase their salary, what needs to change on their personal financials. So we start the process with them by saying, right, imagine you're on 30K, 40K, 50K, whatever it is, depending on the level. Tell us what you want to be on next. And they might say, well, I want to be on 35 next, or 45 or 55. And we say, okay, to get from A to B, this is what you have to do. So pay rises historically are retrospective. Our pay rises are targeted in advance. Everyone knows exactly what they're working towards. They know that they'll get it if they hit their goals. And crucially, they have complete awareness over the financials. So they don't ask for things that they know aren't possible. Oh, we need an extra member of the team, or I want a pay rise when I can't get it. It's just all laid bare to them. And then the final thing on culture, we just really, really try and make it a nice place to work. I think we've been very good at creating an environment where people start at a certain time, they finish at a certain time, they take their lunch break, they're not working super late into the evening. Yes, of course, it happens all the time. But I think the difference is that we really, really trying to make sure it's, 9 till 6. I think the fundamental point there is we believe that people work best if they just work their set hours. We don't believe that working really late produces more productivity. So we're not aiming for that. Whereas I think some organizations do. So culture, I think, is the kind of the fundamental foundation to absolutely everything we do, and we put so much energy into perfecting it. It's not perfect. Like, we do not think it's perfect. If you spoke to our team, I'm sure they'll be able to pull out stuff that they say, this doesn't work so well. I suppose the
It's
difference is,
always an evolution, though. Like,
yeah, and the
we're never
difference
going to
is,
get
like,
to perfection, but it's always a journey. It's like anything.
yeah, and I think the point from where we're coming from is we will always just try and make it better. Like, we always see it as unfinished business, as a work in progress, and we're always trying to change it and improve it.
Wouldn't it be fair to say the agency that believes, or any organization believes, that they are perfect are the ones that are truly blind to the problems that they've actually got?
Yeah, I think, and it's just, you think you're perfect, you'll be complacent, and if you're
Yeah.
complacent, then you run into trouble. Certainly, I think we've done a lot to improve our culture and make it better, but it's totally a work in progress. And I could probably think of 100 things that I'd like to change and make better, and we will just continually work on it. And it has to evolve as well with what the employee landscape looks like as well, because people want different things now than the employees 10 years ago. And obviously, we've been in business nearly 14 years, so we know a lot about how employees have changed in terms of what they need to find fulfillment, right?
Well, this brings me on to a really important space, because of in that time that you've been doing this, and you've been employee forwards, let's say, you've seen how society has changed, how practitioners have changed, how thinking and innovation has changed. And during all of this, we've had technology and platforms which have, in fairness, influenced that and maybe accelerated that as well. What are the expectations of the people that you worked with a decade ago compared to now? And I think more importantly, as a question, what have you had to change in your approach as, and I'm not going to get into the millennial X, Z, issues, and certainly nowhere beyond there. But how have you had to adapt in how you engage with people as time has gone on?
That's a really interesting one. I mean, I guess obviously there is so much more talked about now, and so much more awareness, from kind of the generation that even just coming into the workforce about work-life balance. It wasn't really so much talked about when I started out. And I think that's kind of only a good thing. Obviously now, we are a hybrid work model. And that is really, really important to the younger generation. That has it's interesting, the effects that has. We are really pro hybrid working, as Liam said, but you need to be very conscious as an employer about hybrid working, especially for those who are starting out in PR, because you don't get every single day the spontaneous, listening into kind of conversations, or hearing the kind of senior team on the phones pitching to journalists, and all of the stuff that you kind of happens by osmosis of being in an office and kind of understanding, office culture, how to dress, all of this kind of thing. So, we're very aware of that, and it's about how you maximize the time in the office when you're together, and not make any presumptions about how people that are new to PR might view things or operate. We all know that kind of the Gen Z generation, and obviously, the generation under them coming up, they are consuming media in such a different way to, say, myself or Liam. They're getting a lot of their news from places like TikTok, short burst news areas, and again, it's almost teaching people to sit down and read a whole article when they're very new to PR. I think that is something that's going to continue. Obviously, we have to adapt our PR campaigns to all the changing media landscape, which we're always doing. But I think there's definitely a generational shift there. I was sitting on the tube with my 8-year-old son and opened up the Evening Standard, and he just said, wow, there are so many words on that page. That would take you ages to read. And I was like, no, it wouldn't. So I think there's a big generational shift between the way media is consumed, that obviously, we need to be very aware about as employers, and need to adapt PR campaigns accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think there is a lot of negative talk about Gen Z, not just in our industry, but in the sort of wider working world. I think people are kind of showing their age really when they start criticizing Gen Z. I think a lot of it is mythology. We've actually got loads of Gen Z people working in the agency, and our experience of them is they are completely hassle-free to work with and incredibly hardworking. I think the big change that has happened in not just 10 years, I think a bigger time frame, right? I think people perhaps initially just saw their job as a way to get a paycheck at the end of the month. And I think now, on a much larger scale, the majority of people are seeking other forms of fulfillment through work. And I think that's making companies look at the business differently and look at how they operate differently with their employees. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bit like when you have a challenging client, they can be annoying, but actually they improve your processes. And I think it's kind of the same. If we have younger people come into the agency and they hold the business to account in different ways, then it's a good opportunity for us to improve.
There's so many learnings that we have, working with, because we have people in the agency that are literally, 21, whatever. Obviously, we do work experience placements, internships as well. And there is such a big learning there, just in terms of understanding the headspace. And obviously, we need to adapt our output as an agency for our client work to that, because that is the generation we're talking to a lot of the time. And I think Liam and I are really conscious of that because, we did start out when we were really young and we were always the young ones. And now, we're learning from the younger generation. And I think that finding purpose is really, really important. And that kind of we try to feed that through our culture as well.
Purpose, value, alignment, authenticity. I hate to use the authenticity word because I think it's one of the most abused words in the English language. But what I've certainly seen from, and I'm listening to you, right? I'm sat here. I don't know if someone's on the underground with their, earbuds in and listening to this. I'm now 46 and I'm like, I was the young one. And it's like, okay, what's my responsibility to the people coming in? How can I help them on their journey without also indoctrinating them into my ways? Because are my ways any better than theirs? Whilst, professionally, there are things that need to be done. I need to learn from others. I've always had this need to learn from others, whether it's people of different cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, etc. It's always intrigued me to go, okay, well, how does your lived experience really inform the decisions you make? And does that whole approach add value to our collective space on the planet, ignoring the whole work thing? Are we stronger together? And the answer is always. It's always yes. And that space, that opportunity to look at, am I stuck in the past? I'm not going to leech off of people, but am I stuck in my ways? Are there different ways to do this? So I'm always intrigued to look at different ways of thinking.
I was just going to say, and I actually think, I don't know if you agree with this, Liam, but I would say actually since the pandemic and all the disruption that happened there to ways of working and everything, I would say now we're so much more flexible and open-minded in our approach than ever before, and I agree, it's curiosity that keeps you young. And yeah, we need to remain open-minded to different opinions and ways of working, for sure.
What I get from you is not just that these are the things that we feel are right, and these are not only the things that we feel are good for our people and therefore the clients as a result, but I feel that you've kind of got this next step piece. Is there another piece beyond the PR, just the work itself, where you want to bring change, where you want to make a difference, where you want to help things? Is there a piece like that around?
Yeah, 100%. I think, and again, don't want to sound kind of cliched, but we are a family business, and we do really think of our employees like our family. We want to treat them in the right way and support them, and we're very close to them, personally, as well. And in terms of our sector, we represent so many purpose-led businesses with a kind of bigger mission. And that's really important to align ourselves with, and select the type of businesses that we work with and that we can be proud to represent and get behind. And that, to use your phrase authentic, that we can authentically promote, and with a clear conscience, kind of pick up the phone to media and really believe in them. And I think that for me is really, really important.
Do you ever get people coming into your organization, whether they're at the student level or just into first days of being a practitioner, where the sense is, media relations is a bit old hat, and actually we could just communicate directly with audiences, cutting out that section? Or do people come in realizing quite early on that there's that balancing act?
I think they understand there's definitely a balancing act, but I think the difference is, I guess, is that with platforms like TikTok and Instagram, the younger generation are creating their own content on there all the time. So they feel that there's a level of knowledge around those platforms that they're bringing to the table already, because they're interacting with them, as a consumer, but also as a creator, however small that might be. And so I guess the world of media still feels more kind of mystical in a way. And, because they're not, the journalists aren't generally as kind of visible. They don't know who they're talking to. Whereas, you can pitch an idea to a TikTok creator and feel like you really know them because you followed them for years, and, they're sort of showcasing their kind of personal, there's not that boundary. So I think that's the difference. But yeah, we don't get people coming in and sort of poo-pooing at traditional media. It's more that I feel that they have, they're coming to the table with some knowledge of the other platforms, as I said, from both of their own creation and the consumer level.
Looking at values, looking at trust and transparency, looking at your beliefs and those of the people whom you choose to work with and those who work with you. Can you just tell me a little bit about the Trading Standards Petition and what was behind that and how that came about?
Basically, we saw a story in the Times that said Trading Standards was moving to ban the use of dairy-related terms for non-dairy products. So, for example, someone might have a plant-based milk and they might describe it as a milk on their packaging with a Y, okay? That's been terminology that has been in use for years and years and years. And Trading Standards is now made the decision that they want to outlaw it. Now, we took issue with this for a number of reasons. One, lots of these companies that are using this type of terminology are really, really small. And the cost of changing all of their packaging and all the rest of it would be ruinous in some regards. The other thing is that Trading Standards claimed to be doing this because it was creating consumer confusion, which we don't believe is a real thing. And no one in the industry believes is a real thing. No one is picking up a carton of nut milk and assuming that a cow has produced it and coming back and complaining to Sainsbury's and asking for a refund. This doesn't exist. The other thing is, they're applying it to some sectors, but not to others. Great example is peanut butter. Trading Standards is not turning around and saying, we've got to change the term to peanut butter because it's not got dairy products in it. So it felt a very strange thing to do because it felt like it was targeting one particular sector. As a business, we represent all types of companies within the food and drink industry, and we felt that this was kind of an unfair targeting of a particular industry, one that actually we've worked with a lot. And the final point is that when you innovate in an industry, then you do new things that people aren't familiar with. You coin new terms like milk with a Y that people aren't familiar with. So you got to push the boundaries. And we're of the view that trading standards and the British economy in general needs to be very open to innovation, disruption, new things. That's how it retains its dynamism. That's how it retains its growth. It felt monopolistic. It felt unfair. It felt like it was trying to dampen down the free market capabilities of the food and drink industry. And we saw this article in the Times. We saw that no one was really saying anything about it. So we said, well, why don't we create a petition, get together all of the food and drink brands that we are connected with, whether they're a client of ours or not a client of ours, and we're supported by people who are clients and not clients, and basically do a media campaign to say, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Let's get a petition going to get Trading Standards to change their mind. I think they've got until like September or something to finalize what they're thinking. And we hope that this, in addition to all the backroom lobbying that's happening from the kind of the bigger companies, is going to shift the outcome of it. But it just didn't sit right with some of the values that we have and our experience of the industry. Yeah. And fundamentally, it's trying to address a consumer problem that doesn't even exist. So, like, what's the point, really?
From a comms perspective, we think that everyone should have an equal playing field. We can't have certain categories that can cling on to certain terms. And actually, it was very interesting because off the back of this, I think we've got around 7,000 plus signatures, which is really positive. But off the back of this, we've had kind of people getting in touch and citing, the earliest known cookbook, which talks about nut milks. So, there's also like a historic kind of food historian argument that actually these aren't even new terms. So it's a really, really interesting one. And, as I said, from a comms perspective, we're agnostic in terms of the sector. It's just that we think everyone should have equal rights. And this is particularly the plant-based sector is a really innovative and growing sector. And we've got loads of independent British brands that have really done some very interesting things, led by very passionate founders. We don't want to see that dampened down at all.
With that in mind, you've highlighted that this was a story that came from, the Times, and there are many sources to be interacting with of news and opinion and social media and the TikToks and everything like that. When it comes to you as individuals, when it comes to books that you've read that have either inspired or unlocked that next special level when it comes to public relations, is there a book that either of you rely on, or has there been a podcast or a blog that you religiously read where you go, actually, these are different ways of thinking? Or is it that reading sources outside of the industry is where inspiration can come from? Emily, I'll start with you on that one.
You can see part of my bookshelf behind me. I'm a voracious reader and I always have been. My kind of main role in the agency is kind of creative strategy. So I'm a big believer in reading outside of sectors. I read everything, biographies, fiction, interesting kind of, history stuff, literally every genre you can think of. Of course, I kind of avidly read, titles like PR Week and things like that. But actually, I'm a really big believer in reading around things, because I find that I get so much creative inspiration from different genres that aren't just even just food and drink and travel and hospitality. And I also, that's something that we really try and inculcate to the team at Palm. We have a kind of book budget for people to go and buy books, and it doesn't have to be in our sector. So yeah, I can't give you a specific PR based one, but I would say read around everything.
Yeah, I mean, we are big believers in like reading, because I think if you read a lot, you become a better writer, and good writing is such an integral skill in the world of PR. I think one. I mean, I listen to tons of podcasts. Some of them are just like completely unrelated to the world of PR. One that I do listen to religiously is a podcast called Pod Save America, and it's ostensibly about politics over in America, but really it focuses primarily on the kind of campaigning tactics that the Democrat Party and the Republican Party are implementing to kind of win public opinion or win particular campaigns. So it's a political podcast, but actually it's really about really, really good PR. And invariably, because he's such a big character on the scene in in American politics, it's always talking about Trump. And unfortunately for all of us, Donald Trump is a absolute genius when it comes to public relations, and it's fascinating to hear about the tactics and the different campaigns that go on over in America. I mean, my opinion is that looking at the ways other industries do really, really good PR, really, really good campaigning is always a great source of inspiration. Obviously, it's completely outside of our sectors of food and drink and hospitality and travel, but the stuff that they do is incredibly inspiring. And actually, this petition campaign that we've just done is almost like a political cause-driven type of campaign as well, which may or may not have been inspired from stuff that we encountered from further reading. So I mean, I think it is almost more valuable in a way to read and listen to media outside of the sector you exist in, because you live and breathe your sector. You probably have a really good understanding of it already.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I also think that Crooked Media have put together, who are the people
Yes.
behind PodSave, are just brilliant in the way that they think of framing things and positioning the question, and then the success that they've had in rolling this out into multiple productions, because the format is so flexible in asking the question why, which is something that always scratches the itch for me. Okay, as we get to the end of today's episode, I have a question for each of you, and it's along those lines of the people that you interact with when it comes to the onboarding, when it comes to those who are cold approaching you. Liam, if I could start with you, one piece of advice for young PRs trying to get that foothold in the industry.
That's a challenging question, because there's quite a lot of different things you could say on it. I think it's really valuable for people to kind of understand exactly what PR is. I think PR is one of those interesting industries where I think the perception of it, because it's obviously depicted in certain ways in the media, which is not necessarily accurate, the perception of it is not necessarily in line with what the reality is. So I think one thing that people need to understand about PR is it's incredibly rewarding and fulfilling, but it's also incredible hard work. And I think making sure that you are committed to the world of client servicing, public relations, agency culture before you enter it is really, really valuable, because that's very, very obvious if you're interviewing. I think what you want to do is you want to have a really good handle on the media landscape, whether that's traditional media, whether that's social media, whether that's influencer marketing, because I think for someone at a junior position in an agency, so much of what they're being judged on is how they understand the media landscape. And even if they've been in a scenario where they've never spoken to a journalist before, or ever reached out to an influencer, if they can come to an interview and say, right, I'm interviewing for a place at Palm. I know you guys specialize in food and drink, and this is my understanding of who the movers and shakers are in the world of food and drink. That is a massive advantage. I think if someone's entering a job for the first time and at the very, very start of their career, my advice to them, which is something I did when I was very young and it really, really worked, is just to say yes to absolutely everything. I think what employers value the most for a new person entering their organization is reliability. If you're reliable, then you don't necessarily have to be massively talented. If you're talented and reliable, that's fantastic. But reliability is incredibly important. But also just an incredible can-do attitude. The people who have come into the agency, who have started life as an intern, and you've turned around to them and you said, can you do this random job that might not necessarily be appealing, but do you mind doing it because we need someone to do it? And they have responded with enthusiasm, positivity, and they do that with everything that they've been set. Those are the people that you just hang on to because you think, well, they're a pleasure to work with. And I think talent, of course, is really, really important. Capability is really, really important. But personality is such a decision maker when it comes to hiring people, especially in smaller agencies.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So very succinct, like be prepared to muck in on anything. And, you know, likewise, I remember my very first job, I was an intern at a News International publication. And I just made the tea constantly and got the editor's lunch. And I just, you know, I did it seriously, and I wouldn't even have considered, you know, that it wasn't a great job. And I got noticed by the editor immediately and got offered something and kind of leapfrogged other people. And that was not conscious at all. But now as an employer, you know, as Liam said, the superstars are the ones that do everything with grace and do it efficiently and with a smile on their face. And they're the people that are real gems that you end up working with for years and years and years and go up and progress, you know, at light speed.
Well, our time is up for today. I'd love people to have the opportunity to connect with you directly. How could they do that?
Yes, you can find us on Instagram at Palm Public Relations. If you'd like to email myself or Liam directly, it's just our first name, so Emily or Liam at palm-pr.com, and we will get back to you personally.
A big thank you to Emily and Liam for contributing to this episode of Fuse. You've got all the contact information of how to get in touch with them. And if you'd like to find out more about Fuse from PRCA, simply visit prca.org.uk/Fuse, and you'll find not only audio episodes, but video episodes linked there as well. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and please do share this with colleagues and friends.